May 24th, 2021.
Recording in progress.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Tapia,
Present.
Councilmember Stolberg,
Here.
Councilmember Stone,
Here.
Councilmember Bloomberg,
Here.
Councilmember Holloman, Councilmember Littwer,
Present.
Mayor Rotering.
Here, we have a quorum. Everyone please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we send our condolences to Councilman Holloman, who has unfortunately had a death in the family and will not be able to join us this evening. Please keep her family in your thoughts. Next item, I am going to call on Steve Elrod, Corporation Counsel.
Perfect. I just want to confirm that we continue to operate remotely, all in accordance with the Illinois Open Meetings Act. The city manager is present at City Hall. The City Hall is open, and arrangements have been made for remote participation by members of the public. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Corporation Counsel. I am seeking a motion to approve the minutes of the regular City Council meeting held May 10th, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Will the clerk please call the vote on the approval of the minutes?
Councilmember Tapia,
Approved. Yes.
Councilmember Stolberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Stone,
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Littwer, Mayor Rotering.
Aye. I think my internet may be the one that's not working right now, so I apologize. There we go. Okay, now we're back. Okay. Thanks. Thanks for your patience. I am seeking a motion to approve the warrant list.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions on the warrant list? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia,
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Stone,
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Littwer,
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays, and the warrant list is approved. We will continue on to the report of the mayor. The city has 18 commissions, boards, and advisory groups composed of volunteer residents who provide valuable guidance to the city council. We greatly appreciate them. These citizen volunteers are appointed by the mayor, me, with the city council's consent. And I have one recommended appointment this evening. That's to the Historic Preservation Commission. I am seeking the council's consensus on appointing Erica Weeder. Do I have your consensus?
Yes.
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 Terrific. Thank you. And thank you to Erica for her volunteerism on behalf of Historic Preservation. Continuing on, I have no proclamations this evening. I do ask that everybody join us Monday, May 31st at 11 a.m. for the annual Memorial Day observance, which will be held virtually this year, again, due to the pandemic. Representatives from local veterans groups will be present, and the Highland Park High School Band will perform. Residents without access to Zoom or the internet may be able to view the ceremony via public computers at the Highland Park Public Library, which will be open briefly on Memorial Day for this purpose. Program details are available at cityhpil.com/Memorial Day. Next Friday, June 4th, is National Gun Violence Awareness Day, and we invite you to wear orange to draw attention to the crisis of gun violence. The Wear Orange campaign began in 2015 as a tribute to high schooler Hadia Pendleton, who was shot and killed on a playground in Chicago in 2013. 8 years after her tragic death, Wear Orange Weekend is a call to action to advocate for common sense solutions to protect children, students, first responders, and communities as a whole. Every day, more than 100 people in the United States are killed with guns, and more than 200 people a day are wounded. According to Everytown Research and Policy, federal, state, and local governments spend a combined average of $34.8 million each day to deal with the aftermath of gun violence. While that is a staggering figure, no amount of money will bring back a loved one who was lost to gun violence. We can do better, and doing better starts with taking action at a local level by raising awareness, sharing information, and finding solutions to create safer communities. Join the campaign next weekend by wearing orange and posting a selfie to your social media to show your support for a nation free from gun violence. June is Pride Month, and the rainbow flag will be flown at City Hall to show support and solidarity for our LGBTQ+ community members. The city's flag includes black and brown stripes in an effort to make LGBTQ people of color more visible and to promote inclusivity within the movement. LGBTQ+ people continue to face numerous disparities, especially trans and non-binary youth. 42% of more than 32,000 LGBTQ youth responding to the Trevor Project's annual survey reported seriously considering to attempt suicide in the past year, including more than half of the transgender and non-binary youth. However, the survey also showed that those who have access to affirming spaces and support networks reported lower rates of attempted suicide. Small measures of support can have a big impact. We can all play a part in creating a safe environment for LGBTQ+ youth, and flying the rainbow flag at City Hall is just one visible way of showing allyship to the LGBTQ+ community and reaffirming our commitment to our values to stand against hate and prejudice. To show your support, place a rainbow flag in your window or a welcoming yard sign on your lawn. Add your pronouns to your email signature and social media profiles, and get in the habit of using language that doesn't assume gender or sexual orientation. To learn more about the challenges facing LGBTQ+ youth, visit thetrevorproject.org. And to learn about how to be an ally, visit GLAAD, GLAAD.org. Thank you so much. That's it for the report of the mayor. The next item on our agenda is business from the public. This is for citizens wishing to be heard on items not included on this agenda. City Manager Newkirk, do we have any business from the public?
Great, thank you, Mayor. We would like to thank members of the Housing Commission for joining us this evening. We have a joint meeting with the Housing Commission as part of our committee, the whole meeting, which is going to start right after the City Council meeting. As it pertains to any business from the public for this City Council meeting, we have not received any emails to the email address cityhp@cityhpil.com, where individuals can email us. So no emails. There's no member from the public here with us at City Hall, although the doors are open and they're welcome to join us. And then at this time, if there's anyone that has joined us virtually that would like to address the council, please raise your virtual hand and we can call on you in that fashion. And I don't see any comments there, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. We will continue on to our scheduled business. Items 1 through 7 have been grouped together for omnibus consideration. I'm seeking a motion to approve items 1 through 7.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilwoman
I'd like
Stone.
to ask,
I'm sorry. Councilwoman Stone had her hand up. Thank you.
Can we pull number 5?
Sure. Councilmember Littler.
I was going to ask the same thing, sorry.
Okay, great. So now I'm seeking an amended motion of items 1 through 4, 6 through 7.
That would be my amended motion. Thank you.
Agreed.
Seconder is agreed. Any comments or questions on items 1 through 4, 6, or 7? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia.
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stone.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Littler.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye. 6 ayes, no nays. Items 1 through 4, 6, and 7 have been approved. Item 5, a resolution authorizing award of the Public Services Roof Repair Contract to DCG Roofing Solutions of Melrose Park, Illinois. Councilmember Stone.
Thank you. I had asked the city manager earlier about this item. Since a roof tends to last for probably 20 to 30 years, and during that time, I would hope we would be putting some solar panels on the top of this big, flat, sunny roof. I wanted to find out whether we might be able to do a structural analysis to see whether it's appropriate for that before we put a new roof on the building.
City manager.
Yep, thank you, Councilmember Stone. I did confer with Director Ramesh Kanapareddy, Public Works Director, and we certainly are able to engage with a structural engineer to do an analysis to see if additional capacity would be warranted for the roof. That was not done as part of this roof repair. Although the proposal that is before you this evening is to repair the roof for the administrative portion of the building. So it's not the entire structure. And so given that small amount of work in comparison to the entire building, we are recommending that we move forward at this time with the roof repair. And in the future, if it's warranted that or just, if the council is interested in us exploring solar, we can certainly add that to our major project work plan. We would need to do a structural analysis and engage with a structural engineer in that regard. There'd be some additional work that would be warranted as well, with the understanding that it would just be a larger scale project that we would have to undertake. And we could certainly take a look at the entire roof scope of the project at that time.
At this point, it's simply a repair and not a replacement? Or, right?
Correct, right.
Okay, so we're not replacing the roof, we're simply repairing a portion of the roof.
Well, over the administrative portion, right. So it is
Right.
replacing the roof
Right.
over the administrative portion of the building.
Right, okay.
It's replacing the roof on the administrative portion,
Correct, right.
not repairing it, replacing it.
It is replacing over only the administrative portion of the building.
And do you know what percentage of the entire public works that would constitute? How many square feet?
Let me just ask Director Canapareddy if he is aware. We can also bring up a map and just show you in terms of scale, if you're
Okay.
interested.
Councilmember Littwer had her hand up, and so did Councilmember Stolberg.
To the inquiry with regard to panels, I thought we should also perhaps look at the option of a green roof, something that has been encouraged in the city of Chicago. And I just feel that if we're going to be replacing even a portion of the roof, I think we should look at what all of our options are and what the cost is, because unless this is a very small portion of it, time to do this type of work is when we are replacing it. And we are replacing that one section, even if it's only one section. So all I would ask is that we at least think about what the options are and the costs involved before we go ahead with this.
Councilmember Stolberg?
Thank you, Mayor. The only question, and I agree with Councilperson Littwer, Councilmember Stone. Of course, we want to be green and environmentally friendly. The question I have is two parts. Number one, obviously, this repair, from what I read, seems necessary, and the delay for a structural study, et cetera, may cause more damage than good. Doesn't mean it can be ruled out. It should be ruled out. But on a secondary note, and as long as we've got Director Canapareddy here, whether it's solar panels or a green roof, in my experience in doing it with my buildings, they are not mutually exclusive of the roof repair. The panels and or the green roof go on a support system on pavers, et cetera, on top of the roof, not penetrating the roof membrane. So I don't believe it's a reason to delay, but I do firmly believe that it's a reason to investigate further. But like I said, I don't think it's putting on a new roof and then tearing it off for these potential improvements. I think whatever we would do along those lines would actually rest on something, because you don't penetrate the membrane anyways.
I think there's a structural issue, though, in terms of weight bearing and so forth. And my question is, we're a soul smart city. We've talked about community solar for years. Is there an opportunity for the Sustainability Advisory Group to maybe take a look at a much broader scale analysis of what needs to be done? And I agree, we don't want to spend money and then spend money again, but by the same token, it does sound like time is of the essence. Director Canapareddy?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I think all are excellent questions. First, let me answer Councilmember Stone and Councilmember Littwer. Yes, the administrative wing, if I have to take a guess, it's like maybe 25% of the entire public services roof. So just so in terms of the scale, I can show you I can share a picture if you want to see what I'm talking about. So can everybody see? So, so the administrative wing is that light gray color. That's the administrative wing of the entire roof. So we are replacing roof on the administrative wing. So to answer the question, yes, that is correct. We can always add the solar panels afterwards, because if you look at any literature, including the EPA, what they recommend is that if you're going to replace your roof in the next 5 to 10 years, replace your roof, and then you can always place the panels on top of it. And there's two types you can do. You can do the ballast systems, which goes on top of the roof, and then you have what you call is the conventional, which is like the railing that you put some kind of a railing, and then the panels go on top of that. So either one of them systems, they always recommend that you do replace the roof. We would rather go with the railing system, so that if there's any future repairs to be done on the roof, you're not replacing the entire ballast, which goes on top of the roof. So since it is a, so we got two issues here. One is, of course, we got to do a structural analysis to see the weight of the solar panels. Can it sustain on our existing, number one? And number two, we need to engage some kind of a solar panel firms to see what kind of, what kind of systems that can install and what are the cost benefit analysis. So yes, can we do it? Absolutely, we can do it. But I think what we are saying is either of those options will have minimal effect with the roofing project that we are doing right now. The future will have minimal effect on either option.
Okay. And at the moment, we are not paying for electricity. We do, of course, support the environment, want to diminish our emissions and do everything we can to help support alternative forms of energy. But I think it's important to note that the city taxpayers are not paying for electricity for that building.
That is correct.
Okay. Councilmember Stone, I saw you had your hand up.
I did, thank you. Ramesh, is the building, in order to do a structural analysis to make sure that it can support the solar panels, is that something that can be done just using the drawings that I assume have of the building? Or would something need to be, would the roof need to be peeled back to see some of the structure to do that?
No, I think it's twofold. Yeah, one they can give a preliminary analysis, Councilmember Stone, looking at the drawings. But I think it also depends on what kind of solar panel. Most of the solar panels, what I have at least read, are they have become lightweight, to be so the future. But this is a commercial grade because this is a commercial building. So it is good to engage somebody to just do a preliminary analysis of what does it entail to put in a commercial grade solar panels. The one thing is to put the panels. The other thing is to, again, how to route it. Again, administrative portion is a small portion of the entire public services building. So if you are looking at only administrative, that's what we are doing, a roof repair right now. If you do the entire public services, that's a different story. Then definitely we need to engage somebody, because it's much more flatter, square footage wise, you have much flatter area for the entire public services building than just administrative wing. But yes, you are correct that it will require somebody to look at the drawings, but also just to make sure where we're going to put the roof, because remember, we also got HVAC units. So the panels have to be designed in a way that doesn't interfere with those, with the HVAC systems. And also, how do you route it? Yeah, that is correct. But all are doable even after the roof is replaced.
So it sounds to me as though we can take this action today to approve this project, take care of business that needs to be taken care of. And I frankly would love to hear back from the Sustainability Advisory Group in terms of a much broader community solar approach, both in terms of efficiencies, economies of scale, getting more people and more governments to kind of focus on this opportunity rather than one small project at this moment. I'm kind of curious to know what other people think. Councilmember Lidor.
Well, I had a couple of questions. First of all, and I don't mean to go back on what I'm saying, but one of my questions is, if we are not paying for electricity, then one of the benefits, and I'm not taking away from the environmental, but and this can be, this is the kind of thing that you recoup after years, and it does come back, and it's also a good environmental move. But one of the reasons I suggest the green roof is because it is flat, And if there really is nothing to be gained financially, at least we could be in keeping environmentally by making it a green roof on top too. But I assume you might have to do a study on that in any case, because even if you're just putting plants up there, which green could be, which is environmentally much better, you still would want to make sure it was weight bearing and it was possible to do that. So one of my questions is to please, when the sustainability group or whomever looks at this does consider it, I'm not just advocating for panels. I think we need to look at all different environmental options for this. And now that I see what a small portion it is of the group, I can see going forward with this at this point, assuming amount of peeling back, so to speak, and cost involved in that. But secondarily, I really do want to look at all the options. And I guess I do also have a question as to what the time frame would be in terms of that group coming back to us with some additional information and cost. And that was the other thing. I did check with North Shore School District 112 because they are doing so many different buildings right now. Really is extremely high, which is one of the reasons I'm willing to come back on that and look at alternatives for it. But they also seem to think that a sustainability study should not be that expensive, or I tossed out a number of about $10,000 to them and they thought that was extremely high. So I just want to caution this group also that perhaps it could be done for less too.
We certainly could do some preliminary work right now. And as you know, we're in the midst of our budget. So I would just suggest we do some preliminary work to identify what the analysis and costs would be. We include it in the budget and it would be a 22 major project.
And there would be a request for it to be included in the work plan of the Sustainability Advisory Group. Okay. So at this point, I'm seeking a motion to approve item 5.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia,
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg,
Aye. Oops, sorry.
Councilmember Stone,
I'm so used to being second. I'm sorry.
Well, vote for me too, Kim, it's fine, don't worry about it.
Councilmember Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Littlewer,
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays. Item 5 is approved, and we'll circle back on doing a follow-up study and an assessment of how do we move forward with community solar. Thank you for a good conversation. We have no items under other business. Business from the council. Is there any business from the council? I haven't heard of any. Thank you. Business from city staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of reports. We are pleased to announce that the Senior Center will reopen for in-person activities on June 1st at the Highland Park Country Club. As the council is well aware, we do have funds in our 10-year CIP, specifically in year 2024, to renovate the country club, to modernize the facility, to adapt the space for senior center programming, and to enhance the beautiful venue that's currently being used for banquets and operations. But until then, we thought it was prudent to transition the seniors there. Most importantly, the country club does provide ample space. It's got ample parking and it's fully handicap accessible. So it provides greater opportunity than continued programming at the senior center off of Laurel. So again, we will transition on June 1st. Similarly, all other administrative buildings will likewise reopen for walk-in service starting June 1st. We continue to encourage the public to do business with the city as we've been doing in the last year. Full ample services are available via online, through drop-off service, and we are responding, I believe, efficiently in that fashion, but our doors will be open for face-to-face walk-in service. And even now at this point, if someone is very interested in meeting with us face-to-face for any reason, certainly we can schedule those appointments as well. If the public does desire to come into the buildings, we encourage individuals to wear face masks or a face covering, although we are adhering to the state and CDC guidelines as it pertains to face masks for vaccinated individuals. If individuals are interested in information of where they can get a vaccine, we have a wealth of information on our website, and we're continuing to include information on our e-news, which is issued every Tuesday and Friday. So please sign up for those on the city's website at cityhpil.com. And then the free connector bus will resume service on Tuesdays and Fridays, and masks are required on all public transportation. So again, further information is on our website. Just want to switch to a couple of information as it pertains to special events. Weather's getting warmer, people are outside, people are hugging, and hopefully everyone's vaccinated. So just want to share some exciting special events that are taking place. First, as the mayor noted, we do have plans for a virtual Memorial Day observance that'll be held at 11 o'clock. Information about where to access the link for that Zoom meeting is on our website. Hopefully the public is aware we have communicated that the city and park district both made the difficult decision to cancel the parade for Independence Day and postpone the fireworks and the music festival to Labor Day weekend, specifically on September 5th, which is that Sunday. The music festival will start in July and it'll continue every week leading up to Labor Day weekend. We traditionally start planning for the parade and all these Independence Day activities in February. And so it was really at that time, based on kind of the state of our region and where we were at, that was one of the many reasons why we made the decision to postpone, very similar to several of our neighboring municipalities as well. However, there is much to celebrate in our communities, certainly with the nation's independence. So we encourage people to go to the city's website and also the Park District website. And I just want to share a couple of fun things that are happening. We are coordinating a virtual Independence Day parade. So you can go to our website /July 4 for details about that virtual parade. The Park District is planning a series of events such as a virtual firecracker 5K fun run, a free firecracker family boot camp competition, a drive-in movie night at the rec center, specials for rounds of golf at Sunset Valley Golf Club, and then also at the mini golf course, and then an evening event at Hidden Creek Aqua Park. So that's just a snapshot of all the different things that are happening for July 4th. Food Trucks Thursdays will be starting July 8th and then running every week in the Ravinia Business District. So we started communication in that regard last week and we will continue. So great special events happening there for Food Truck Thursdays. And then property owners and businesses are also coordinating a number of special events. And so if anyone is interested in coordinating a special event, we have an application on our website. We ask that you notify us as soon as your plans are being developed so we can just review if you're interested in using the city's public right-of-way. And we'll help guide people in that regard. So a couple of events that are either in the works or have already been approved is the Ravinia Farmers Market, which is going to be starting on June 2nd and continuing through October. The Arts Center's Festival of Fine Art is planned for June 26th and 27th. The Chamber's working on their sidewalk sale for July 30th weekend. We have approved a music event featuring Dr. Mark and the Sutures for August 14th. And we are coordinating with Ander Productions on the Port Clinton Art Festival. So that's just a snapshot of so many different fun special events that are planned this summer. And you can go to our website for further information.
Terrific.
Nice.
May the weather be with us.
And healthiness.
There you go. Thank you. Okay, well, that's it for the city council meeting. The committee of the whole will follow immediately thereafter. I'm seeking a motion to adjourn the city council meeting.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia,
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Stone,
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Littlewer,
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays, and our city council meeting is adjourned. We will now have the Housing Commission join us, and then we will call those meetings to order. Why don't I call the city council meeting to order, and then we can have Chair Birkin call the Housing Commission to order. So this is the City of Highland Park City Council Committee of the Whole meeting, May 24th, 2021. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Tapia,
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg,
Here. Here.
Councilmember Stone,
Here.
Councilmember Bloomberg,
Here.
Councilmember Holloman, Councilmember Littlewer,
Present.
Mayor Rotering.
Here, we have a quorum. why don't we approve the minutes and then we'll have Chair Birkin call the Housing Commission, or do we need to call the Housing Commission first?
Mayor, you can continue to approve your minutes. The Housing Commission can then convene its meeting.
Sounds great. Thank you. So I'm seeking a motion to approve the minutes of the Committee of the Whole from the May 7th, 2021 special meeting and the May 10th regular meeting, 2021.
So moved. Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Will the clerk please call the vote on the approval of the Committee of the Whole minutes?
Councilmember Tapia,
Yeah, aye.
Councilmember Stolberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Stone,
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Littlewer,
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays. Our minutes are approved. I now welcome the Housing Commission and ask Chair Birkin to call his commission meeting to order.
No, thank you, Mayor, and I'm glad to be here. Do we need to read the entire preface?
It's not necessary, Chad. You can call your meeting to order. We've already announced that this is a remote meeting and it's being conducted in accordance with the Open Meetings Act.
Okay, then let's have this meeting called to order. And do we need a vote to do that?
You can declare it call to order, but you will need to take a roll call for determining attendance.
Okay. Charmaine, will that be you taking the roll call for us?
Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
Please do.
Okay. Commissioner Fernandez Sykes,
Present.
Commissioner Dennison,
Here.
Commissioner Poster, Commissioner Abreu.
Here.
Commissioner Bernstein. Here. Chair Birkin.
Here.
And Liaison Bloomberg.
Here.
We have
Okay,
a quorum.
2 hats for you, Tony. Sounds good. Looks like I have frozen once again.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, we are unfrozen. Sorry. Okay, so welcome, Housing Commission. We're delighted to have you join us this evening for this joint meeting. This is an opportunity for us to take a look at the 3 options that you had considered in your proposal to us concerning a financing strategy for Piers and Ravinia Housing. With that, we are going to be seeking your input and providing feedback to city staff. And with that, Gita, do we turn the meeting over to Charmaine, to Joel, who is taking us
Director
through this
Fontaine,
conversation?
We do have a PowerPoint that'll just, it mirrors the staff report that's in the packet. And so with everyone's approval, we're happy to go through the PowerPoint presentation, give an overview of the 3 options the Housing Commission considered. We've got some feedback certainly to share, and then we can open it up for discussion.
Perfect, thank you.
Commissioner Dennison has his hand up.
Okay, Commissioner Dennison?
If it would be all right, I just wanted to clarify that the request here is not to actually move forward with one of the choices. It is to research specifically the 3rd choice, I believe, on the list, which is the LIHTC funding. So it is for permission to use city staff time to research that choice, not to actually go with that choice.
Thank you. And this is, for us, this is a committee of the whole. So we don't take any action during the committee of the whole. This is simply an opportunity for a policy conversation and analysis. And let me just reiterate how much we appreciate your taking the time, all of you this evening, to help us with our understanding of your analysis. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, Joel, I'll turn it over to you. You're muted right now, so we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Okay, if I may, Mayor, I'm going to share my screen with the presentation. Hold on one second. Okay. Okay. Can everyone see the presentation main splash screen? Great, thank you. Okay, well, thank you for your time this evening, Mayor and City Council and Housing Commission. I'm going to go through a short presentation about the various financial strategies for Piers and Ravinia housing. So discussion and purpose and recommendation related to this presentation this evening. What we're focusing on is staff is recommending that the commission and the city council discuss asset management policy and goals for Piers and Ravinia, including approach to preservation and maintenance, scope of investment desired over the next 10 years, time frame for the scope to be implemented, financing options, acceptable level of debt, and other considerations, trade-offs, and risks. By way of background, this project is part of the Housing Commission's strategic planning initiative this year, whereby we're looking at a number of things, including our financing strategy, looking forward to working with the commission on grant-making strategy and other types of property maintenance strategies as well. But this presentation this evening focuses on the financing aspect of things for both Piers and Ravinia. In late 2020, staff raised refinancing with the commission with the following initial objectives. One, to reduce debt service / increase cash flow by taking advantage of a low interest rate environment. And two, refinance Ravinia specifically to leave the mark-to-market program because the requirements of that program reduce available for reinvestment. The commission essentially through Evergreen commissioned a study, a third-party study, to look at the capital needs for the buildings. So that capital needs assessment was conducted by EBI Consulting. They were procured through Evergreen's corporate headquarters, and they're used along with other third parties to assess their various assets over time. Evergreen, or ERES, also provided additional insights based on its own operational experience with the buildings. So we had the EBI consulting work done, and Evergreen reviewed that and provided some insights as well. And the idea there was to get an idea of what we want to do or what we need to do over the next 10 years so that we could plan appropriately for a capital improvement program. So the commission's refinancing consideration took place over the course of several meetings. And as I just mentioned, we talked in late fall, in December, staff presented some analyses with regard to Ravinia and Piers mortgages. And staff was directed to explore further financing options such as bonds. In February, we worked with the commission and explored various refinancing options again, and staff was asked to come back with some more details about a LIHTC, which is a low-income housing tax credit program, and whether projects from the 10-year CIP, the capital improvement plan, could be accelerated. That capital improvement plan we're referring to there is the projects identified by EBI Consulting. March and April, we explored possible scope of work, minimum 10-year capital investment program, and a recommendation to pursue an exploration of possible low-income tax credit project for both the rehabilitation of Piers and Ravinia properties, subject, of course, to council approval. Came back to council in late April, and we're here tonight presenting in more detail at this joint meeting. Thank you for the time to consider this, Mayor and Council and Commission. So the initial objectives were further refined over the course of these several meetings to take advantage of the low interest rate environment, which was the start of all of this, and to improve the cash flow of Ravinia, of course, to leave that mark-to-market program for Ravinia by paying off that note and refinancing with a new note. This would get us out from under some administrative overhead associated service. And we talked about proactive capital investments in the properties and how we might achieve those. So in terms of refinancing options, there are three main areas that we considered. And all of options pay off the Ravinia mark-to-market second position loan and get us out from under that program, which was an overriding consideration from the get-go. So first, and these aren't in any order of preference, they are just merely numbered 1, 2, and 3. First is refinance debt at current principal amounts. And essentially, I would say, while they're not ordered in 1, 2, and 3, they are basically in varying degrees of current state versus more complex or further away from current state. So you'll see that in just a moment. First is refinance debt at current principal amounts. There we consolidate our debt at a lower interest rate to yield lower overall debt service payments, thus enabling more cash to be available for investments as a pay-as-we-go kind of a model. Second is refinance debt at a higher than current principal amounts. We consolidate our debt again at a lower interest rate, take on some additional debt to fund building maintenance, repair, and capital improvements of our choosing and as are affordable. Third is refinance debt and utilize low-income housing tax credit program. And so here, same as number 1 in terms of consolidation and lowering debt service, but we're entering into a partnership under this option to obtain additional capital for substantial rehabilitation of the buildings. Now, why substantial rehabilitation? Because you can't participate in a LIHTC program unless you do a minimum investment level, and that level is about $40,000 per unit or more. So there's a threshold there that one must achieve to even participate in that. And again, as I said before, all 3 pay off the Ravinia mark-to-market second position loan, which is a important objective that needs to be obtained no matter what path we choose, in my opinion. So asset management policy and goals. So what does this boil down to? We had a series of facilitated conversations with the Housing Commission, and we were looking at 2 general approaches to our properties. 1, maintain and incrementally improve, and 2, enhance and rehabilitate. So under number 1, and again, these are numbered just for the sake of having numbers. They're not number of preference per se, but number 1, maintain and incrementally improve is essentially you have 2 options there, sub options under there. You have a pay-as-you-go completion of minimum maintenance items identified by the EPI consulting report, and incremental improvements thereafter with the cash flow that we have yielded additional cash flow from the refinancing and all that. The second option under that main category is take on some additional debt to achieve near-term completion of the minimum maintenance items. So you'll accelerate those minimum maintenance items to the early part of the 10-year time horizon as opposed to throughout. And then you have pay-as-you-go incremental improvements thereafter as cash flow and items are identified permit. In the second category or broad pathway, you have enhance and rehabilitate. On this path, you're taking on additional debt, or you're using a LIHTC to avoid additional debt for the near-term completion of a small rehabilitation program or a large rehabilitation program. Now, small, large, what I'm referring to those is large is the over 40,000, essentially being able to be LIHTC eligible in terms of project size. So for that's the context in which those 2 terms are used. Small is something less than that, something less than LIHTC eligible, okay? So what are the required capital improvements? So what we did is through EBI Consulting, they prepared a 10-year capital and needs assessment for both Ravinia and Pierce based on repairs and replacements customary to continuing the current operation of these buildings. The assessments provide what can generally be considered a minimum maintenance for the next 10 years. That doesn't mean poor maintenance, it just means what the buildings need over the next 10 years for sure. EBI identified projects with a total estimated 10-year cost of between, for Ravinia, $255,000 was identified in the EBI report. $355,000 was identified after Evergreen looked at that report and added some of their own personal experience with the operations of those buildings into it. So you're looking at about $15,000 to $21,000 per unit for the 17 units that we call Ravinia. Pierce building, a 68-unit building, they identified $652,000 or about $9,600 per unit. So again, just to compare with the LIHTC, minimum required to participate in a LIHTC is 40,000 per unit. That's construction costs. So there's a distinction here. That's hard costs, construction costs. That can include building systems, exterior building, interior of units, common areas, soup to nuts, you name it. Those types of projects can be a part of that $40,000 per unit. I do emphasize the hard costs though. In terms of the LIHTC, that has to be after all your soft costs and everything, the actual put in place hard cost of the construction project must be 40,000 per unit. So looking at some trade-offs, select trade-offs and risks, standard refinancing versus LIHTC. So in terms of our cursory assessment of the select trade-offs for standard refinance versus LIHTC here. So the first is standard, the second is LIHTC. We have several categories of trade-offs. You have ownership, complexity, guarantees, cost of capital, scope, transaction costs, and time to close. In terms of ownership, standard refinance, you maintain sole ownership of the buildings. With a LIHTC, you'll need to enter into a partnership. Complexity, refinance has a standard level of complexity, we would say. The LIHTC is a highly complex endeavor. Guarantees, you have typical loan obligations under a standard refinance, but in a LIHTC, you have a performance guarantee, whereby you need to implement the agreed upon improvements within a specified time period in a compliant fashion, if you will, meaning compliant with the state and federal regulations so that the equity investor can achieve the tax credits as planned and agreed upon. Cost of capital. You have, under the standard refinance, you have interest payments. Under the LIHTC, you have no interest payments on the investor equity or investor funds, okay? You'd still have whatever the mortgage is that we've refinanced, the debt that is not part of the project, that would still carry interest payments, but no, the additional monies needed to do the work that would be coming from the investor, you would not face any interest payments. Scope. With the standard refinance, we're talking about a smaller, more limited project. Even if we choose to rehabilitate the buildings, you have access to less capital without taking on substantially more debt, probably debt beyond what we would like to do to match up with the LIHTC's ability to generate equity for improvements. And so on the LIHTC side, you're talking about a larger, more comprehensive rehabilitation program. As I said before, at a minimum, hard costs must be $40,000 or more per unit. Transaction costs are generally lower with the standard refinance and higher with the LIHTC. However, with the LIHTC, those transaction costs can be part of the LIHTC deal and thus paid for by the investor. And so they get credits for that. So there is some advantage there, although it is more burdensome overall in terms of transaction costs. Time to close, much shorter time frame for a standard refinance, less than 6 months certainly. Longer for LIHTC, 12 months at least. So those are just a handful of select trade-offs and a cursory assessment from staff's point of view on this. Risks, you have several risks. You have interest rate risk that pertains to both options, right? Whether you do a standard refinance or a LIHTC, we're facing interest rate risk. The longer you wait, the more risk potentially you face. So in theory, the LIHTC is actually a higher risk because it's a longer period. The changes in tax law, well, that could affect LIHTC. Recently, as you know, there's changes in the tax law a few years ago. Things change in these programs depending on that. That risk, it's depending on how taxes go. If taxes are cut, then LIHTC becomes less advantageous. If taxes are increased, it becomes more advantageous, and it depends on what taxes we're talking about. Very complicated. But generally speaking, the tax law risk is a LIHTC risk versus the standard refi. Compliance risk, it's higher with LIHTC. What do I mean by compliance risk? I'm talking about the obligations under either scenario. So if you do a refinancing with a bank and you take out a new loan, you have obligations to pay back that loan in a certain way and certain timing to all that. You have to do that. You have to comply with the rules of the HUD loan or whatever it is that we're taking on to do that and however we refinance. Under the LIHTC side, you have to essentially operate your project within the regulations set forth by HUD and the state for LIHTC programs. So not only do you have this performance guarantee, and that's part of the performance guarantee, that you will perform these upgrades within a specified time frame, and you'll do it in such a manner so that the equity investor can lay claim to the credits, and you're in compliance with the state and federal government in terms of the program in general, so that the IRS can recognize the credits that they're claiming, meaning the equity investor will be claiming. Investor risk is the final area I'd look to here in terms of risks. And what does that mean? Well, when you're in a partnership, there's a risk. You have a partner and the investor themselves poses some sense of a risk. We would, of course, try to find a qualified investor, a reputable investor, all of that. But just like we are a risk to enter a partnership into, and so too is an investor, whoever that might be. So there's investor risk. I'm going to take you into just some few, just real quick into the numbers a little bit to give you a sense of where these buildings are under the different scenarios, okay? And again, this is all very estimated, okay? This isn't final anything. So we're just trying to show you and illustrate what we're talking about in numbers as opposed to words. So here under the refinance debt at current principal amounts, as you recall, that was the one of the three that I just talked about earlier. Under that scenario, you're looking at Piers on the left and Ravinia on the right. And you see here a current debt situation on the top and a potential new debt situation on the bottom in each of these two examples. So we go from, as you can see here, by taking advantage of this low interest rate environment, our numbers improve. And what do I mean by that? Well, we have a lower debt service. We have a higher cash flow as a result of a refinancing. DCR is debt coverage ratio. Those ratios are very healthy compared to industry standards. So they were healthy as they stand, they're good, and they are healthier under this scenario, okay? So a standard, industry standard range is like 1.11 to 1.20. We're well exceeding that in the peer side of here. So you could see just the benefits of refinancing are quite substantial. Cash flow improves to $443,000 from $279,000. That's great. Those monies can be used for, reserve, and R for R is revenue for reserve. So that's before revenue for reserve. We have to maintain our reserves at a certain level per HUD and state, but we will be certainly able to do that fairly easily. But that is a caveat on that cash flow. Provided that those reserves are at the adequate level, the amount above that becomes money that can be used for other things. Ravinia, if you take a look at that side of the ledger, a different project, smaller project in terms of the principal and all, and fewer number of units. Here we show a cash flow improving from about $23,000 to $88,000, and the debt service going down from $114,000 to $49,000. And as you recall, I said earlier that we would be looking to get out from under the mark-to-market program. That's accounted for here, but there is a caveat here with that debt service above saying that it's deceptive because the second loan takes 75% of our cash. That's correct. So, we have a cash flow demand from that program that we won't otherwise have under the new debt situation. So in both cases here, refinancing just makes financial sense. And it will and the cash flow will be increased. In this scenario here, we do not change our debt. We just roll over the principal. We have $3.1 million and $1 million. We're just saying, okay, let's refinance, and there we go. And the finance debt at a higher than current principal amounts. Okay, here we're showing that we're saying, okay, how about we generate on the peer side a cash flow situation about approximate to what we have now. So 254,000 in the bottom left and 279,000 to compare to, which is the current. So let's do that, okay, approximately. And let's see what kind of money we could generate in terms of a loan, additional debt to take on cash out for rehab. Here we have a $7 million loan would be the new debt, and it could generate about $3.9 million for rehab. On the Ravinia side, doing the same type of thing, we would increase our debt there, and we would get about $980,000. So roughly $4.7, $4.8 million worth of additional debt that we could use to improve the program, improve the project. So do capital improvements of all types, not just the EBI, which clearly could be funded very easily through this, but also above and beyond that as we deemed appropriate.
Joel, can I ask a question before you go to the next slide? If you go back one, do you know what the value of each of the buildings are? The Piers building and then the combined value of the Ravinia buildings?
I don't have that number handy, but I'd have to look that up. But we would need to get, as part of any refinance or any of these situations, we'd have to get a current assessment of the buildings.
Thanks.
So I have about 9 questions, and I see your hand up also, Councilmember Stolberg. So if we could maybe, Joel, are you near the end?
I'm almost wrapped up, Mayor, if I may just more slides.
So if I could just ask everybody to kind of keep track of their questions, and then we'll pop in with those when Director Fontaine is done. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay. And so then we have the low income housing tax credit option. So here, what we've done is we put the 2 projects together. So we're packaging this, okay, for the purposes of this analysis. And so we're maintaining the same principle in terms of the debt. And then we're talking about, well, what could we do here in terms of a LIHTC? And we could get out of this about $4 million allocated to hard costs, rehab. All other costs would be separately covered. So either by the investor or whatever closing costs weren't, we'd have to roll into some new debt. But having said that here, not knowing exactly what those costs are, we show here that you could generate a much better cash flow situation. You also generate significant dollars for rehab. And that particular example shows a $48,000 hard cost rehab per unit for the buildings. So that's quite significant, certainly more than we showed was identified by the EBI report. But again, this would be replacing things that aren't just things that are expected to be needing to be replaced over the next 10 years, but things that you want to essentially upgrade or replace even earlier than their end of their useful life kind of a model. So that's $4 million hard costs. In the previous example, we generated the 3.8 and the 1, so you got about $4.9 million. But remember this, that's all in. That's not just hard costs. You still have a bunch of soft costs to take out of that. So you can lop off a third, about 30% or 25% off of that number. And so that brings it down to more like 3.7, let's say 3.8 million in hard costs for the total of those two, compared with the 4 million in this. So roughly an equivalent size project, but you get a lot more less money in the building and hard costs in that model. So again, just to come back to our staff recommendation, it was that the council and commission, discuss the Housing Commission's asset management policy and goals for Ravinia and Piers to include the approach, the scope, the timeframe, financing, acceptable level of debt, and other considerations such as trade-offs and risks. And just as a refresher, there were 2 main paths that we talked about, and I could leave those up here for you, Mayor, and the council and commission if you'd like, but that is the end of my presentation, Mayor. But the next steps would be, depending on city council feedback, staff would pursue securing essential services needed to further inform the course of action selected, or to explore both courses of action. So with that, Mayor, I turn it over to you and council and commission to discuss as you see fit and ask any and all questions. I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, and much appreciate this more in-depth opportunity for us to look at the three options that were being considered by the Housing Commission, and look forward to hearing their input as well. So as I mentioned at the outset, I do have several questions, and I'll just jump in. So the first question I have, you referenced changes to the tax code. If we went with the LIHTC option, would that trigger capital gains and create some sort of tax implication that hasn't really been taken into consideration given the somewhat longer and drawn out timeline that's involved with that process? So I'll just roll through my questions. And then we can-
May
Go
I
ahead.
answer that question?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So, look, I'm not a LIHTC expert and I'm not a tax expert. I will just say that as a caveat. But what we're referring to there is if the tax code changes, the credits from a LIHTC become more or less valuable, depending on what type of taxes folks face in terms of the investor class or the investors coming to this. So that's why that's a risk. If there are changes in that, it could be it improves the situation for LIHTCs, or it doesn't. It makes it less advantageous to enter into LIHTCs for investors. So you get different types of investors and different types of money, and they get a different type of return on their investment.
But I do want you to put a pin in that tax question, because there is also the risk that by virtue of changing ownership of this asset, you're now triggering that capital gain, and that will end up reaping all kinds of costs that may not be included in this presentation. So I just want us to.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, Mayor, and we would have to understand fully what the implications are for us to enter into that partnership, because we are a nonprofit as we are now, and will that remain? And yes, that definitely would need to be looked into, and I don't have an answer for you on that. My understanding is that we would still maintain that, but you're right, it needs to, due diligence is needed to be done on that.
And I suspect that the nonprofit status is irrelevant in that, in the answer to that question. So I would caution us and urge us to get that, because that could be a significant cost that hasn't been taken into account. Questions that I had specifically regarding administrative costs, percentage of administrative costs to total gains, and cash flow opportunity for us. I don't know if we have that matrix in terms of the three choices and what the administrative costs are versus the amounts that you would be able to have liquid to put into improving these assets. I have a question concerning what we do with the folks who are living there while we're in the process of rehabbing. If you have to do the significant rehab, does that make those units uninhabitable, and what kind of impact does that have? I'm sorry, I've got like notes all over the place. Have we assessed what types of protection we can contractually bring about to address the possible risk with the change of ownership, temporary or not? When you lose control, there's going to be an increase in beta. So what kind of contractual protections are there to make sure that the city's not being put at any kind of increased risk exposure? What is the impact of the LIHTC in terms of the city's debt capacity? That may be a question for Julie Logan, who I know is on this call, in terms of what other projects are then impacted in terms of the city's total debt capacity, and what kind of risks are there also in terms of accruing significant debt in terms of, once again, putting us at risk with our credit rating. You know, I recognize and so appreciate this desire to improve these properties and to make things better as assets and to take advantage of this very real economic opportunity. Thoroughly appreciate and understand that. But in the broader scale of things, I just have significant concerns for the city's finances overall, diminishing the risk of exposure. One other question I have, and I don't know who can answer this, but how have we assessed the potential conflict of interest with Evergreen in terms of their taking a look at A, these buildings, B, what needs to be done, and then C, having somebody from their development branch taking these projects on. So I know that's like a lot of questions, and I'm happy to open it to my council colleagues as well before we dive in with the Housing Commission. But those were sort of my top of mind questions that I have right out of the gate. Council members, feel free to raise your hands, and I'll call on you, Council Member Stolberg, and then Council Member Tapia.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to the Housing Commission for being here tonight. Joel, clearly a ton of work on your end, and that's much appreciated. I do things like this every day, and I have a bunch of concerns, many of which echo the mayor's and some on my own. Number one, obviously, triggering a capital event is important. I wholeheartedly agree with the mayor on the issue of bringing on a partner, conflict of interest, performance standards being met. And if I were looking at this, I look at the risk reward in doing so. Joel, would you mind putting up that slide that shows the refinance options? Just for a minute.
Which one?
The one that shows the current debt versus if we refinance both properties with no cash out.
There you go. This is the one.
You are not sharing
You're
your
not sharing.
screen, I don't believe.
Oh, I am sorry. It's on my screen, Mayor. I apologize.
Well, thanks, Joel.
I didn't realize
Looks
I
good.
didn't realize I unshared. Okay.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay. So
There you
my
go.
first concern is obviously increasing our debt 2.5-fold. That's a lot of debt to carry on these two buildings.
Wait. This does not.
No, I'm talking about the simple refi option versus the low-income housing tax credits.
Okay, low-income housing tax credit, that one, you have,
I don't need to see that one. That's okay.
okay, this is Piers and Ravinia. In that one, they're combined.
Correct.
Okay.
But nonetheless, the debt goes up
The
by,
debt is, the debt is the same. 4.1 million,
right?
add 3 million plus 1 million, that's that number. Okay, so
go back a second, Joel.
so the 3 million and the 1 million are that's the number.
So what's that 7 million represent?
That's a different option. That's taking money out to do additional repairs. So there's three options. We have the,
Okay.
I'll step right through it one more time.
No, I get it. It's okay.
The current situation, the add more debt situation to do more projects, or the LIHTC situation, which does not add more debt, but nonetheless gets more
No
projects.
problem. So I misspoke. The LIHTC, obviously, we're talking about a whole bunch of other stipulations and complexity that I don't see that the delta on the cash flow makes sense in all those other reasons of taking on a partner, potential conflicts, standards of reporting, and things to be met to accomplish those. But if we go back to the other option, I would not be supportive of the potential new debt at 9 million versus 4 million, simply because if you go back one more slide, please, to the straight refinance option, for EBI showed less than $1 million over the next 4 years to accomplish all of the needed projects. If you look at a straight refinance option, you can pay that in 2.5 years simply out of cash flow.
We could do the entire EBI project with our cash flow. That's correct.
Okay, and let's assume you do it in 2 years. That leaves 8 years at roughly $500,000 plus a year. That's another $4 million into the bank account.
Mm-hmm.
So why would we take on debt at 3.25% when we could warehouse our own money, even though interest rates are nothing right now? We're paying 3.25%. We get a good capital plan and a study, and we pay that off with our own money over time without raising debt, without taking on a partner, without having to meet performance standards, and still doing the recommended 10-year projects within the next 24 months. Maybe it's possible with this kind of money in reserves that we could get a line of credit for 12 months to pay it as we save. Obviously, these debt coverage ratios are so much more impressive on these refinances. Any bank's going to look at your debt coverage ratio at 1.1 to 1.2 and be happy. Obviously, at a debt coverage ratio of 3 or almost 4, we're in good shape. I understand interest rates are cheap historically, but if a simple refinance is going to generate this much more cash into our reserves why do we not accomplish where, number one, we're knocking out the EBI 10-year plan in the first payback period is less than 2 years or approximately 2 years. And anything that we would look to either cash out more money or take on a partner to have additional funds, we're putting away $500,000 a year. And I think the most important thing here is with even with that cash out refi, there's no increase in revenue. So where's the risk reward in that? I just think the straight refi is simple enough, it's quick enough, it accomplishes all of our goals over the next 10 years and funds our capital reserve tremendously so that after year 2 and years 3 through 10, we have plenty of money to potentially do all of these other things not identified in the EBI study, or as we all know in buildings, things break and we have to pay for them. So I would be a big supporter of, I mean, obviously I want to hear what the Housing Commission has to say because they put in a lot of time. But to me, sometimes the simplest, cleanest, and quickest is the most effective, and that certainly appears to be the case here.
So what you're saying, Councilmember Stoberg, here is in path number 1, you're looking at path 1A, correct? Which is pay-as-you-go completion of the minimum maintenance items EBI, and then incremental improvements thereafter based on cash flow, essentially. Correct?
Well, based on cash flow and savings, correct?
Correct. Yes. Right.
And I think, unless the Housing Commission says, if EBI is recommending these series of improvements, I think it was 300,000 and 600 and change, less than $1 million. If they're suggesting that over the next 10 years, if we could bang them out in the next 2 to 3 and still save another, $3 million at that rate plus, I think we're accelerating the EBI plan. We're getting to our problems and our required items sooner, and then we're not taking on any more debt, and we've got free cash flow to do more things. And what this plan doesn't say is what happens when something breaks not on time, that's not planned. We still need those reserve funds. So by throwing off 500,000+ a year, we have some security built into that too, without a giant debt hanging over our head.
We do have reserves, Councilmember Stoberg, as well, that could be employed to do these repairs as well. So
that was my next question: is what do we have in current reserves between the two?
We have reserves as well.
Okay. So I'd be curious what
we have the following. So, in terms of the reserves, we anticipate about $250,000 in Ravinia and 116,000 in Piers. We have a certain minimum requirement in each of 102 in Piers. So we're a little above the minimum in Piers, and we're considerably above the minimum in Ravinia. We also have entity funds, meaning the associations have funds as well. Ravinia has 152,000 there, and Piers does have $1 million.
Okay, Joel, I think I've gone through my preference, and obviously I'd love to hear what the Housing Commission says, but I do share the mayor's concerns on tax implications, partnerships, and it just seems this could be so clean and easy and invest in our own future with a simple refinance.
Okay.
And more timely to capitalize on what we know for the moment, but may not be there in the future.
Of course.
I see Commissioner Dennison has his hand up, and then I know Councilman Tapia also had his hand up.
So I just wanted to respond specifically to Councilmember Stolberg's questions. I think it might help. So for one thing, the EBI does not, the assessment does not cover everything. They only cover what they could see. So there's an expectation that there is a lot behind the walls that is not there. That is not, known at the moment. The second piece is you had asked about the increase in revenue. So the buildings right now are 40 years old. The expectation is that we can do things like put in unit washer and dryers, improve the aesthetics of the units, and all of that would actually increase the revenue, even though we don't know the number because that's part of the assessment process. That's part of what we're asking to do, is do that research to really understand. And then the last thing is to really understand that and I think you understand LIHTC. I think you know this, that it does basically brings in, free money that comes along with those aspects. You'd asked about the trade-offs. Those trade-offs are paid for with, $3 to $4 million of essentially free money from those investors. And then of course, all the other questions you were talking about in terms of those risks, I think are something we are eager to understand as well. There's plenty of stuff in terms of the structure of the deal that will mitigate risks and also, leave risks there out hanging out that we need to understand before going forward with that. You also asked about a conflict of interest. I think Mayor Rottering asked about that. I completely agree. And I think we all kind of agree with that general idea that there should be some sort of an RFP put out to really make sure that we are addressing that piece. And the whole list, and you had a number of excellent questions that we really do need to address. So that is all part of what we're asking to do, which is find those answers.
Sure. And one thing to keep in mind too, obviously, and if I misunderstood, I totally get it now about the additional revenue, but I think the mayor brought this up as well. Even if we had, these tax credits or we took a cash out refi, I don't think it's prudent, and most buildings don't do it, where you're going to rehab all the units at once. You're going to displace people. It's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be a mess. So by throwing off $550,000 a year of our own cash with a simple refi, maybe we look to phase in a certain amount per year. That way you're minimizing the impact on the current residents. You're not displacing as many. And as those units roll into new inventory, the newer units upon release go for a higher rate. They are having different amenities. I just think with a smart, and I totally hear, Brad, everything you're saying, and I agree we have to get answers. But I really think with some good planning, with $550,000 a year thrown off in free cash flow, I think a good 10-year study, I think we could probably achieve everything we want. And the flip side is, let's say you open the walls and there's $2 million worth of stuff we don't know. We haven't borrowed another $4 million. At that point, our debt coverage ratios are 4 or 3.5 to 1. Now we go to the bank and ask for $1 million, and instead of putting $550 away, we put $250 away, and we service the debt after that. I think that additional debt and even those low-income housing tax credits, I think strap our hands a little bit, especially given what you just said about the unknown. And I agree, there needs to be some studies, and just like everything we do in the city, let's prioritize. Let's figure out if there are units that can be rehabbed that make us more money at first. Then let's figure out how we do 6 or 8 or 10 of those, at 40,000 a unit, still leaving reserves for unknown problems. But I think with a good plan, we could do it all with a refinance. But I totally hear what you're saying.
So let me address one thing is that, so the first question one of the first questions we asked was exactly that of what happens to the residents, because that's our biggest concern. We've done apparently in the past a number of very extensive renovations related to windows and things like that, where it was timed and basically progressed through units in a way that was less impactful on the residents, and that is the expectation of how this would function. But of course, that's again, same question, an unknown. Let me also say that I completely agree with you that $500,000 of cash flow is absolutely a great potential path, and we think that could work very well as in terms of as a solution. So meaning LIHTC may not be the best answer, right? Shoot, there was one more thing I meant to say and I've forgotten at this point. But anyway, the idea is that we will definitely make we want to make these decisions considering all of that, taking all of that into account. Oh, and I remember the other thing is that it may give us opportunities to add units. There may be some places. So part of the research and what we need to do is find out what is behind the walls. So part of the process that would happen if we go forward is bringing in engineers, bringing in architects to really dig into what's behind the walls and repair all of that as part of this program, as part of the $40,000 per unit. Again, if we go down that path, and then also look at opportunities to, if there's some land, maybe an opportunity to add more units, all as part of this program.
Sure, but that would be easily done with a construction loan versus the additional delta on the revenue. I mean,
it's all trade-offs.
I love the idea of low interest rates, but taking on all this extra debt worries me a little bit.
Right.
Especially considering we're going to throw off so much cash that with a good plan over the next 10 years, I think we could accomplish everything. And all of a sudden, if we get an engineering report that says we can add 10 more units, we go and get a good old-fashioned construction loan. We see the revenue stream off of those additional units, and we pay for it out of that revenue without touching the $500,000 we throw off every year.
Except then the issue is we don't get the free money, right, to pay for that.
Well, nothing's free. Nothing's free. You got a partner.
No, right. You got
potential conflicts of interest. You got more legal work, and every time there's potentially an issue, you guys have an issue, you deal with the city council. Low income tax credits, now you got a partner you have to deal with. What happens when our interests diverge at some point?
Fair point.
Commissioner Abreu, I saw your hand up.
I guess I had a question on the additional debt. You're saying LIHTC versus the no cash out option is additional?
No. I understand that there's no additional debt on the LIHTC
Correct.
option. The additional cash out option is additional debt. So that's
Number
one
two.
issue. And then the issue on the LIHTC is tax implications, partnership.
Yeah, no, understood. Okay.
Potential.
Okay, I thought you were comparing LIHTC to the no cash out.
No, I get it.
And I
Thank
think,
you.
I mean, if I may comment real quick.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think I appreciate all these questions, and I think, at least from my perspective, that's kind of where we wanted to go with this, right? It's not to say this is the wrong answer and this is the right answer. It's let's explore this more fully because it's really interesting and potentially beneficial. It's definitely aspirational in some ways. So it's kind of like we have this boat and there may be some holes and we could grab a bucket and some plugs, right? And that works fine. I mean, it keeps the boat afloat. Or is there an opportunity here to, fix it up and make it a nice new shiny boat for the residents? So that's the question. I mean, I don't think we're saying let's go this way, but there's so many questions there and so much potential there that I think we just want to explore it further. But I totally understand your point on the no debt refinance as well, no additional cash out refinance as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tapia. Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Director Fontaine had his hand up. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Mayor. If I may, so yeah, I mean, that's important. And so part of the reason why we've come to the council is we've gotten to a point with the commission where to do any more of answering a lot of good questions requires considerable work and expertise that we would need to get to do. Okay, so that's part of the reason why we're here. So if we're not, depending on where we are at the top level, if we decide like Councilman Stolberg is saying, hey, look, we could just do a regular standard refi real quickly. We lower our interest rate risk and we have a great cash flow situation, pay as you go, and let's do it. Then we don't need to do all that other work. We don't need to risk the time that we're going to take that will be necessary to do all that work to come up with all those answers. And so this is why we're here today. I just wanted to touch on that, Mayor. And so that's part of the reason why we brought it to you at the council at this juncture, because to really find out the deep nitty-gritty answers to a lot of very good questions requires expertise we currently just don't have. We have to go get that and get those answers for you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think we just needed this context and this clarity behind the three options because the original presentation to the council felt a little predetermined. And so I appreciate everybody's willingness to kind of take a few steps back. I do want to hear from Councilmember Tapia. Please go ahead.
Yes, in addition to the mathematical analysis that Councilmember Stolberg did, it has a strong logic to it. I think behind this opportunity of really exploration is to make sure that in this moment, right, of an important refinancing decision, what are the things on the wish list that that need to be addressed, or even the things we don't know should be on the wish list because there's things that are behind the walls, or some new opportunities, right? So I think the key question is, what is it that we cannot accomplish, or may not be able to accomplish in the near or over the next 10 years if we did not have the available cash that we want to have the financing. So I think that was the logic behind some of these requests, is to save money in financing, but an opportunity to say, what is it that we could possibly invest in that would make the housing, that much more valuable, especially the quality of life for our residents. And I think that was the intent with some of these questions. And we don't have the answers yet. Look, I was waiting to see what the capital improvements report would offer, and we saw the report. And it actually was, it came back that the quality of the buildings is relatively good. The cost of capital improvements is not going to be that great. Maybe we will need this other more complicated vehicle for it. But that we were waiting for that answer. And I think there's now, let's explore that a little bit further and see if there's other things that we may be overlooking so that we can be sure that option 1 or 2 or 3 would be the best one to balance both the financial aspect as well as the quality of life for our residents.
Thank you. Seeking any further input from the council or the commission members?
can I just add one thing to Councilperson Tapia's last comment briefly?
Sure, and then we'll hear from
I'm
Councilmember.
sorry, I
Bowman.
mean, Andres, I agree with you. And the reality is any study we commission, and I just commissioned a reserve study for a 50-unit building, and they're quoting me 17 weeks from the time they start. So I guess my question is, rates are cheap. We know the Fed's not moving off them anytime soon. What's the harm in refinancing this immediately, taking advantage of the additional cash flow, and then exploring it? And down the road, if it's 6 months or 10 months or 12 months, we need another study, we need another report, we want to go back to the tax credit option. Why not just refinance this thing and start taking advantage of positive cash flow immediately? It doesn't preclude us from studying, finding out what our needs are, or ultimately changing the game plan, because we're not taking on any more debt. We have the same debt, we're just paying less.
Excellent point. Councilman Bloomberg and then
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Littlewar.
Thank you. This is less directed towards the purely financial issues that were raised, and I think it's been touched on at least indirectly, is if we begin to alter how we finance the debt for these projects in a way that affects the ownership rights. We've noted and we've had some minor experiences with the inability of the city and the commission to make decisions independently of other interests. For instance, where properties have an ownership interest with HUD, it can make it extremely ponderous to make decisions about, for instance, building new units or altering the parking availability or what to do with the land. It's a subtler, to me, frankly, less significant issue than the immediate monetary issues we've been addressing, but still something that needs to be sort of thought about as we're going along. Is it going to affect the ability of the commission and the city to make day-to-day or year-to-year decisions about property usage?
If I may, Mayor.
Sure.
Well, if you join a LIHTC deal, there are, it will be prescribed what performance guarantees that need to be made, and you can't get off that train easily. Okay, so you're on it, and I think the first stop is year 15. Okay, and then you can buy out essentially the deal, which my understanding is you just reassume whatever debt there is and taxes. Again, we haven't done all of that analysis and all that, but you essentially then could get off. However, the restrictions continue on, for 30, 35 years with the affordable housing restrictions. Now, what that to most in, private sector companies, they are concerned about that restriction, right? That's seen as a negative. To us, it isn't. I mean, we're okay with keeping these affordable for seemingly forever. So that obligation isn't a hard one for us. However, those first 15 years, you really have to perform in accordance with the agreement, doing all the investments as scheduled, and you need to make sure that you abide by all the compliance requirements for the administration of the LIHTC. And, if you don't do that properly, then there's some exposure there. But that work would be done we would secure the services of a turnkey kind of an operation, because we would need to outsource that as from a staff perspective. So we'd be looking for a developer that would do soup to nuts the entirety of it. And then we'd have to have the property management work so that you can essentially make sure that you're compliant for the whole period and guarantee it, and then essentially guarantee to us that that would be the case. So it's a complicated deal. It will take time. And even just looking into these things to become more informed about the very good questions asked take time. As a staff person, my concern is that interest rate risk. I do feel that. And I do feel like what would be a mistake is not to do something. That's for sure. And so if we're looking to do any one of the three, fine, there are benefits and drawbacks to each, but generally speaking, the financial situation is better in all. They're different and different obligations, but to spend too much time deciding, I think would be a mistake, respectfully. That's just my contribution to that from a staff perspective.
Yep. Okay. I see Chair Birkin has his hand up, but I know Councilperson Littlewar also wanted to speak. Chair Birkin, did you want to talk to the last comment made? There we go. Thank you.
To talk about the onerousness of, if that's really a word, of the LIHTC we have to compare that to the market that we're in. So that's another encouragement to get out of the situation that we're in. Just for my own enlightenment, by refinancing as a more simple expedient, does that get us away from the mark-to-market situation?
In all three options, the mark-to-market, we're out. Yes, correct. We will pay off that second loan and we will be out from under that. That's the goal. I mean, again, we need to do the due diligence, actually go through the work and get the approvals of HUD and pay on. But yes, that's the intent under all three scenarios.
And do we have a line on maybe even several consultants that we could bring in to help us through these important decisions? Or is it just the LIHTCs?
No, we'd have to procure the services, both legal as well as financial services, to proceed forward from here on any of the options. So it just depends on what we're looking for in terms of advisement.
So from what I heard from that explanation, we have to commit to one of the three options in order to get the consulting information?
No.
No.
Okay.
But if you want to explore all options, it takes longer. That's all, and it's a broader scope for the people involved. That's all. And you certainly could. But there are different expertise that need to be brought to bear. If you want an analysis as to the legal implications of the partnership, that's expert advice on that from a legal standpoint with regard to how LIHTC partnerships are formed, what their tax implications are, et cetera, so forth. If we chose the first option, we wouldn't need to do any of that. We know
I understand.
Option very well. I mean, the first option is a simple refinance. There's really not much to talk about. Let's just get the best rate we can at the lowest cost and we go forward. Sure, that's important due diligence, but we get an appraisal and we go.
To Councilman Stolberg's point, though, wouldn't it make sense at this point to at least go forward with the refinancing while we are simultaneously doing the analysis on the other two options and not miss more of an opportunity? There's a huge opportunity cost to perfectly analyzing all three. We know right out of the gate that one is feasible and that one provides returns in a way that are going to be fleeting as time goes on, potentially.
We could do that, Mayor. I don't know if there are any, I don't know personally if there are any implications of that would frustrate a LIHTC. I mean, once we do a refinancing, we're going to be involved in a loan with HUD, and it'll be a 10-year, you can't break it for 10 years without penalty, things like that. I mean, you lock in the rate and you'll have penalty clauses on the debt that you've locked in on. Aside from that, I mean, we have more equity that would essentially could be used for other debt, or if there is a possibility of a LIHTC, I'm not sure how that would work given that loan is already dealt with. I think we could do that, Mayor, and I think that would be a great option in terms of making sure that we take advantage of the low interest rate environment at least, and then see what else we want to do in terms of more sophisticated / larger project kind of work.
Thank you. So I'd like to hear from Councilmember Littwer, and then we'll hear from Commissioner Dennison and Commissioner Abreu.
First, thank you, Mayor. First of all, I wanted to really thank both staff and the Housing Commission for bringing all these options to us. I do have to admit, I completely agree with Councilman Stolberg that time is not our friend, and we have a great opportunity to really take care of this in terms of really bringing down that, which will give us additional dollars should we determine at some point that there's something else we need to spend them on. I would be very uncomfortable with taking on additional debt of this magnitude in addition to that. So I think we really have, I'm really glad for all the different optionality here, and I don't mind continuing to study it, but I think in a way it's the pound wise, pound foolish kind of argument, where you have the simplest option, the most clear cut, which really takes you to the best place. The only thing I would say is it worries me both about fees for penalties and fees for refinancing were we to switch midway on something. But we have so much money that we could be taking in if we just do the simplest option, that it really seems like the best way to go. And I would urge us to move quickly on it.
Thank you. Commissioner Dennison.
So my question actually is for Joel. Can we can we basically go down both paths of, attempting to refinance with a program that does not have penalties? And I don't know if that is an option, prepayment penalties, and do that in a rapid fashion. And then, well, we research high tech.
I don't know about no penalties. I mean, a favorable HUD mortgage, I mean, there's always, you lock in for 10 years typically, but so I don't have an answer for you on that. And I don't know all the implications of breaking off and doing that outside in two separate deals as opposed to one deal. I just don't. We haven't done all of the work looking into it without, we need to know which path we're going on to do that work. So
I guess, could we
try to find out that, but I don't know right now off the top of my head. I don't.
I guess, could we have a,
we're saving $500,000 a year. If we're borrowing $4 million and the prepayment penalty is 5%, that's 200 grand. We make it up in 6 months. If it warrants buying out early.
Yeah, that's another approach to it. Yeah, that's true. That's another approach. You could just bite the bullet and take on whatever the penalties are. And we will know those penalties as we're doing the refinance. We'll make it all very clear to everybody. I just don't have all the details right now because we haven't pursued that just yet.
So I guess my point is we're here asking the city council to approve us using your time to do research on LIHTC. Can we get permission to basically go down both paths? Like we're talking about, basically do the research on LIHTC, well, essentially doing a little bit of quick research on a fast refinance and getting that done ASAP so that we can come back with, let's move forward on refinance when we're ready to, kind of question as soon as possible.
Right. I'm getting that sense from the council. I guess I'll take a straw poll at the moment and just see, are people supportive of pursuing the question regarding the refinancing? And then we can take a look at the LIHTC question, but at least seize this opportunity right now before it's gone. So thumbs up if you are in consensus with that. Councilmember Littler, I see no response from you, so I don't know where you are. Oh, you are okay. Thanks. Okay, so that answers that question. Thank you. And I think I'm frozen again. Okay, if you can hear me, Commissioner Abreu.
I can
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Thank you. Nobody's moving. Commissioner Abreu, if you want to go ahead, and then Chair Birkin.
Oh, I can pass. My question was related to transaction costs, prepayment penalties, et cetera. So I mean, I think if it's something we can do within reason, it makes a lot of sense what Councilman Stolberg suggested.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Chair Birkin, and then
Yes. Thank you.
we'll hear from Commissioner Dennison and then Councilperson Tapia.
Director Fontaine, we're all under a time pressure, it sounds like. Do you have a feel, or have we got any idea what kind of time would be needed to look at this subject more in depth with an expert?
We have to procure the expert. Regardless of whatever path we were going to choose or any of the options, we would need the expert advice to essentially third-party review of anything that we would do. And so we have to procure those services, give them essentially the initial scope is, hey, we need a refi, and we'd like to look at, what the implications of a LIHTC are as a separate, standalone pursued course of action thereafter, as opposed to at the same time. That's what we would ask for, and we have to get those services. And depending on what you wanted to know about the legal aspects of things, we would need to procure those services as well, because we don't have in-house expertise as to the legal implications of all the ins and outs of the LIHTC.
So what's a practical date for you to come back to us and say, I've contacted these 3 experts and they say it's going to take between this time and this time?
Well, we could do that. We'll do that, with the direction of council and Fisher, we'll do that right away and come back, I would hope within 30 days to have some kind of game plan on when they would be responding back. We'd have to give them time to respond. We wouldn't put a very hard thing to respond to, try to keep the scope pretty crisp and focused, but less we have to give them some time to answer us.
I think it would make sense. And again, Gita, I don't know if Director Logan has insights in terms of the refinancing side. I know she's done this repeatedly in terms of other debt that the city has held. Would love her input on this question as well. Thanks for joining us, Julie. Oh, she's there? There she is. Okay. Director Logan, any thoughts on input regarding the refinancing and who we would need to speak with? Would you be that person? Is there somebody else that would be the appropriate person to check with?
So considering these are, special properties, I'm not sure if the type of counsel that we normally use for city debt would be consistent with the counsel that we would be using here. So I'd have to talk to our debt counselor to understand that, if it would be the same type of. So I don't have an opinion regarding, what type of counsel to use at this point until I talk.
Okay. But today's Monday, and hopefully, this week we can check in with one of our experts and get some direction in terms of this immediate question.
Absolutely.
Super. Okay, thank you. Okay, I had Commissioner Dennison and then Councilmember Tapia, and I now see Councilmember Stolberg has his hand up as well. Commissioner Dennison?
I just wanted to confirm, are we talking about doing these simultaneously or one at a time? And I'm asking, I guess, if there is the capability from city staff to do it simultaneously so that we know if we're looking at a huge penalty for prepayment, that we need to kind of consider that sooner rather than later.
Director Logan and Director Fontaine, thoughts on?
I mean,
procedure?
with counsel, staff has the capacity, but we would need the external expertise, whether
Correct.
it's, being handled by Joel's expert or my expert.
Okay, so that sounds like a question that will likely be answered in the next day or so, and then maybe circling back to this group in terms of timelines and so forth. And we fully recognize there are opportunity costs to delay. There are opportunity costs to the
We've lost you.
sequentially and so forth.
Here, you froze.
We missed your
Thank you.
last 30 seconds.
Okay.
I froze too, I think.
15 seconds, maybe.
Very frustrating. So in any case, I think we'll have those answers within the next day or so, and then we'll be able to figure out next steps. Thank you. Councilmember Tapia and then Councilmember Stolberg.
Yeah, 2 points. They're different, but I wonder if in the direction to Joel, if we can fast track the regular refinance, given Commissioner Members Stolberg's point, because it's going to take longer to kind of figure out its pros and cons, and there's the capital improvement question is behind that one, which is going to take a while. So I would like to suggest a fast tracking on the first, so we can move on that regardless. And then, since we have the floor here, thinking ahead to the capital improvements, I was concerned, but good to see that a lot of the capital improvements that were prioritized in the plan had to do with becoming ADA compliant 100%. And so I would like to put it on record that we would like to, once we have the financing, the money, to really accelerate that and really address that as soon as possible.
Absolutely. I think you have absolute support from the council that that's a priority. Thank you for highlighting that. Councilmember Stolberg.
Thanks, Mayor. Just real quick, Joel, who holds the paper on the 2 notes right now? Is it HUD?
Sure, I believe so. Charmaine, we have Red Capital, and on Ravinia, we have Red Capital and HUD, and I believe it's HUD on Pierce.
So don't we have a rep with HUD that we could go to with a straight refi question?
Sure, we can. Their turnaround times are unknown, I will say to you, okay? So, yes.
That's putting it mildly.
Yes.
The other question that might be interesting, I'm sure we have a copy of the existing notes, maybe for the purpose of just a benchmark. I'd be curious to know what the prepayment penalty is on the existing notes. We haven't talked about that.
No, we're okay at this point. I believe we're past prepayment penalties. Isn't that right, Charmaine? That's why in part wanted to.
No, but what I'm saying is HUD, it takes a long time for HUD to change their policies.
Oh yeah, no, I understand. Yep.
In terms of time and percentages,
right.
It's not going to get worse on a loan that was written 25 years ago with interest
I understand.
zero today.
Yes,
So-
we could look to our existing loan to look to the penalty terms. Absolutely, sure.
And I agree with Councilperson Tapia. I think I would fast track. I wouldn't confuse anybody with two concurrent courses. Fast tracking a refi does not preclude us from doing anything down the road.
Okay. This was such a productive and appreciated conversation. I can't thank everybody enough for your time, for your input, for your questions. Is there anything we haven't answered or any question that still needs to be looked at? Because at this point, I feel like Joel and Julie and Charmaine and everybody knows sort of where we're headed from here. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, Mayor, I believe we need to pursue the refinance and secure professional services to do that, as well as looking into what options we have with LIHTC as a separate matter after such refinance. That's what I heard, Mayor. If there's anything else, let me know.
Councilmember Stone, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just one quick thing. I know Joel mentioned before potential termination fees if we refinance and then want to get out of that refinance and do something different. I think we should be able to find a loan that doesn't have those fees. So I'd put that sort of high on the list to try and.
I understand, and there are considerations. I mean, the HUD loans are very favorable. They may have these penalties, but there's really good reasons for HUD loan. And I don't want to really investigate all different loan. I mean, there's ways of doing these types of projects that are general industry accepted and that we've done in the past. And there's really good reasons for a HUD loan. We'll be glad to provide those really good reasons to you. But I do want to make this a focused type of effort. And I think that's probably one of the best routes that we're going to have ultimately.
Thank you. Director Logan, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that even the city's general obligation debt has some type of prepayment penalties. When you're talking this type of debt, there is generally some type of prepayment penalty for some period of time.
Right. Good context for everybody to have. Okay. Hearing all of that, I will invite the Housing Commission to adjourn its meeting. Chair Birkin, I think that's your call.
Yes. I will try to unmute. Thank you. Do I need a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
A second, please.
I'll second.
I heard a second. Charmaine, would you call the roll, please?
Okay. Commissioner Fernandez Sykes,
Aye.
Commissioner Dennison,
Aye.
Commissioner Abreu,
Aye.
Commissioner Bernstein, Aye. Chair Birkin.
Yes.
Okay, that was passed.
Terrific. Thank you. I'm seeking a motion to adjourn the City Council Committee of the Whole meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Tapia,
Aye.
Councilmember Stolberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Stone,
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Littlewer,
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye. 6 ayes, no nays. We stand adjourned. And again, everybody, thanks a million for all of your time, thoughtful
Thank
input.
you.
Have a great
you.
evening. Take care.
Night.